Plankton has a movie, and overall, it was an above-average experience. There are three main elements of the film that I would like to discuss: how the backstories affected pre-established SpongeBob lore, the animation and art style itself, and lastly, the story. We're gonna be diving into the whole thing, so expect spoilers. Without further ado, let's get into the Plankton movie. Chapter 1: The Lore. Something the Plankton movie does is give a comprehensive history of Plankton's life in the context of his relationship with Karen. Since the film's plot revolves around Karen splitting from Plankton and trying to take over the world herself, the recurring flashbacks to how they built their relationships adds to the story. As far as the history between Plankton and Karen goes, I really love this backstory. It provides the initial reason for Plankton creating Karen, being that he was lonely amongst his peers, and it also reveals that the original Karen was a calculator connected to a potato, which connects Plankton's more rustic upbringing to his more industrious future. The issues that I take with this backstory is how it ignores Mr. Krabs, who really should be a more important figure in Plankton's life. The backstory contradicts what was established in the season 5 episode Friend or Foe, which shows us that Plankton and Krabs were good friends as children, and that episode also gives a really compelling reason as to why Plankton wants the Krabby Patty secret formula. In Friend or Foe, Plankton and Krabs start a restaurant together, but after a falling out, some ingredients get mixed together accidentally, which creates the secret formula. I love this backstory because it actually gives a more nuanced look into Plankton's quest for the formula. He might actually be entitled to it. In the Plankton movie, Plankton does not seem to have even known who Mr. Krabs was until well into adulthood, and had no personal connection to the creation of the secret formula. The new way that Plankton discovers the formula isn't that interesting either. He's just like, yum, this burger's really good, I should use it to take over the world or something. I think the reason they ignored Mr. Krabs so much in the Plankton movie is that they didn't want to distract from the relationship of Plankton and Karen, which is the main emotional thread of the film. While I think it was the right decision to focus the movie on Plankton and Karen, as the Krabs-Plankton relationship has been explored enough in the main series, I feel that Krabs was benched far too much in this film. Krabs is barely even a main character in this movie. The disappointing thing about this is that there really was no reason to contradict the initial Friend or Foe lore. As far as the timeline goes, Plankton could have made Karen before he attended school and met Krabs. In fact, Plankton having a falling out with his best friend Krabs could have even more so established how lonely of a person Plankton is and why he needs Karen. I think this careless retconning is a symptom of the team behind SpongeBob just not caring about continuity at all. Look, I get it. In a long-running show, continuity is gonna get messed up. It's inevitable. Even the lore I just praised in Friend or Foe itself was a retcon of a previous episode that claimed that the secret formula was an old Krabs family recipe. However, there have been so many careless contradictions of timelines within the show that it's clear that the team is taking no care to keep anything consistent. And in a show where nothing is consistent, it's harder to find the Plankton-Karen backstory meaningful. Sure, as of this movie, the story says that Plankton made Karen from a potato because he felt neglected by his family. But who's to say that when they make one of their next spin-off shows, they decide to retcon that because they wanted Karen to be from space or something? But that's what I think about the backstory elements of the Plankton movie. In a vacuum, they're really great, but they are harmed by the disregard for other important parts of the franchise. Quick interruption. Then, back to the video. I also cover the SpongeBob video games over on my gaming channel, The Game Cubicle. You should check out my video on the GBA version of Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. There's some really wacky stuff in that game that I think you'll love to hear about. Link in the description. Chapter 2: The Animation. I don't know why no one makes stuff with 2D animation anymore. Is it that it's more expensive? Has it just fallen out of favor? I don't get it. Look, this movie doesn't look bad. I actually found myself liking the animation more than I thought I would. But I'd be lying to myself if I said that it was in any way comparable to, say, the first SpongeBob movie. I think even the creators knew that the 3D animation they were using wasn't as good as 2D, because there were a lot of sequences within the film that had alternate 2D animation styles, and visually, those are the best parts of the movie. The main characters themselves all look pretty great. They're quite expressive and they move around well, which contributes to the overall slapstick. One thing they definitely don't suffer from is the wacky faces that's been plaguing the main show as of late. If it were 2D, they probably would have had a lot of those. I do take a little bit of an issue with the background fish. They don't feel like the background fish from the main show. There's a few recognizable ones, but not too many. This may not seem too important, but a major part of the plot is Karen taking all the buildings from Bikini Bottom and adding it to her giant robot, essentially destroying the city. If you've seen my video on the importance of the background fish and SpongeBob SquarePants, link in the description by the way, you'll know that in disaster situations, the background fish are important to the story, because they are the primary victims of those disasters. The background fish in the movie look so drab and are so unmemorable compared to the main show that it makes you feel for them less when the town is being destroyed. My biggest criticism in terms of the animation is the environment. The whole thing just looks a little dingy. There's this moment early in the movie where Plankton breaks the fourth wall and is like, "This is my movie, make it look darker." And like, Bikini Bottom already looked pretty drab, so there's not much more to do. The missed potential in not having the ocean and Bikini Bottom itself look more beautiful is that when Karen destroys Bikini Bottom, well, it's not that much of a downgrade. Chapter 3: The Story. Now let's talk about the story, and I'm pleased to say that this is where my most scathing criticisms end. The story is the strongest part of the movie. Like I said earlier, the film revolves around Karen splitting from Plankton and trying to take over the world herself. What makes this plot interesting is that it makes it not only in Plankton's best interest to make things right with his wife, but it's in the best interest of everyone else in Bikini Bottom as well. This prompts characters like SpongeBob, Sandy, Mrs. Puff, and Pearl to get involved in Plankton's marital spat. There's this recurring element where SpongeBob acts like Plankton's therapist throughout the movie, and I think that was a really great framing device for their relationship. Since the conflict has forced Plankton and SpongeBob to team up, Plankton has no choice but to open up and be vulnerable. And it leads to some great character moments and some of the backstory elements I talked about earlier. I'm on the fence over whether or not the writers amped up Plankton's negative qualities and the way he treats Karen just for the sake of amping up the conflict and giving him more to change from. There are definitely a lot of times in the movie where he comes off as unlikable, but I also think that maybe he's supposed to be unlikable. After all, they call him a jerk. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. Do you think they made Plankton too unlikable, or was it just right? Something else that the Plankton movie does really well is that it intertwines its action conflict with its emotional conflict. Plankton can't defeat Karen by being a better inventor. He is forced to confront himself in order to solve the problem. My personal favorite part of the movie is when Plankton rejects the Krabby Patty secret formula, showing that Karen is more important to him. It's interesting how little this film focuses on the formula, and since it wasn't all about the formula, this moment where Karen just gives it to Plankton hits a bit harder because at this point, we weren't really thinking about it. It's Plankton's final trial, the formula or his wife, and he chooses right. Overall, the Plankton movie proves that the SpongeBob team is still capable of telling compelling, heartfelt, and funny stories. There are definitely some elements that I am not a fan of in the film, being the weaker animation and disregard for continuity, and also this moment that was trying way too hard to be a meme. But all in all, the Plankton movie is one of the best pieces of SpongeBob media in recent years. Hey, if you like this SpongeBob video, maybe you'd like to see this other video right here. If you like what I do and want to see me do more of it, consider becoming a channel member or supporting my Patreon. Link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.